Daniel, week 7 officially in the books. Gather round the campfire, one and all.
It's crackling, Ty. It's crackling.
Get those emotions out. Perhaps the next hour or so can serve as a catharsis for you wherever you may be. Thank you for listening to the Solid Verbal. I'm Ty. He's Dan. We have a full campfire theme this evening. We will dive in, not to the fire, but to the content. I promise you. Momentarily, Dan Rubenstein joining me from the West Coast, sort of where it all started, right here on the Solid Verbal. Recording this a lot earlier in your time zone, yeah?
It's the best. It's the best, Ty. I think I have more energy. I'm at a buddy's place right now in the West Coast in LA, and quite excited. Even though I'm gonna probably have to go through some emotions to get to the finish line of this show, I argue that might even make for a better show. Hopefully, I don't know.
Well, that's the point, right? If we're sitting around the campfire, that's what you do at a campfire. You sit around, you get your emotions out. You play some guitar poorly in most cases. You tell stories. That's what this is. It's an hour of storytelling. It just so happens we've got a lot of college football to talk about. Let's get rolling with our fire starters.
Let's do it.
Well, Castaway to get things started. Dan Rubenstein, Washington 36, Oregon 33. The Oregon Ducks had him, Dan.
Yeah,
they had him. It felt like they had him. It felt like Dan Lanning was a little bit like the guy at the blackjack table who just decides, you know what, we're going to split the sixes. I'm enjoying myself. I just want to press my luck. And then it all sort of goes wrong and you bust on both hands. He decides to go for it on fourth down. Doesn't work out. Gives the ball back to Michael Penix. Michael Penix does what Michael Penix does. Made him pay. And that's how Washington ended up winning. I know there was a lot more that went into it, but that's certainly how it ended. I know you posted a video out on the YouTube channel. People can go and watch that. But before I waxed poetic about my thoughts on this game and Bo Nix and Penix and whatever else, Dan Lanning, we had people calling in about Dan Lanning. What were your thoughts?
How much time do you have, Ty? Okay, so big picture, the game rhythmically sort of went how we thought it would go, right? Michael Penix really threw some incredible balls, and Washington actually ran better than I thought they would be able to do, although Oregon hasn't been strong against the run this season. But look, everybody's going to talk about a singular thing in this game. For as great as Michael Penix appeared to be at times, especially, he was beat up in that second half. He was taking some shots in that second half.
He was hurt.
And he was an absolute warrior, staying in there, hanging in there, especially when they got the ball back at midfield, driving down to take the eventual commanding and winning touchdown. It's a decision thing, and it's an execution thing for Oregon, because Oregon was able to climb back into this game because of their defense, because of their pass rush, because of their ability to get off the field against an excellent offense in Washington. It was not converting fourth downs. It was not taking the points after that interception. Free points, I would remind you. And I'm very much a proponent of being aggressive, that this was a touchdown party, and it's hard to win games that are touchdown parties with field goals. But in the case where you're able to flip the field and give yourself an extra possession right before half, and you're getting the ball back to start, and you have that opportunity, that middle eight opportunity, it's always easy in retrospect to say, take the points. You got to take the points. Absolutely take the points. I like aggression. But what was clear was Oregon was not prepared to execute in those high leverage moments. They did not have the plays. They did not have winning plays on fourth and short, on third and short, all that often. And so that was the difference. Like, I think it's important to separate decisions from results, but also if you're making decisions and the plays you're running seem uninspired and don't give you an incredible chance. Like, they weren't running Bo Nix, right? It wasn't a zone read situation where he was a running threat. They could collapse on the run without worry for that. Like, I think Joe Moorhead calling this offense, this is an Oregon win. Now, we don't exist in that reality, but I thought this was a pretty telling situation for the status of Oregon's offense, which I think is the best pretty good offense in America right now. Because even though the numbers suggest that they're an elite offense, in a game like this where there's very little in the way of, forget a vertical passing threat, but an intermediate passing threat, it was a lot of short stuff with a couple of shots in there, not a ton of variety. So I thought Washington's defense performed super well against Oregon at times, but Oregon was still running the ball relatively well. And so this was a game that Oregon, unfortunately, was not able to be good enough to win. I've said this earlier on in the season. I think winning is a skill, and I think Washington was a more pronounced winner on the field. So that's my takeaway, that Oregon is not a full winning operation right now. And again, I have no problem with going for it on fourth down, but when that's what the execution looks like, it's back to the drawing board. What did I say about Penn State? Excelsior? What's go-to package? What is your unbeatable? Like, you have this playing NCAA football, right, Ty? You have 3 plays where you're like, it's 3rd and 4. This is a no-brainer. This is automatic. And 94% of the time for an advanced, controlsman like yourself.
That's right. Thank you.
And so that to me was the issue. This was an Oregon team that was not ready for prime time. And I've said this a bajillion times. Good teams take advantage of opportunities. And I don't have a problem with not punting, because Washington was going to drive those 20, 30 net yards in a minute, 30 seconds, whatever. But you have to have a better idea of what will and should work when you have that kind of experience and talent. And the Oregon offense was a mess. And the Washington offense was, even though they were slowed down considerably, they were the best thing on the field because they rose to the occasion more often. Even with those goal line stops, that crucial goal line stop near the end of the game, it was a Washington team prepared to take advantage of opportunities in a way that Oregon wasn't. And that to me was the story of the game.
Man, what is it about these 4th and short scenarios, even 3rd and short in some cases? I feel like we had this exact same conversation a couple weeks ago when it was Notre Dame against Ohio State. And that was my gripe about the play calling. Actually, I went nuts about that play calling on our preview episode before week 7 and how I thought it might get in. It didn't get in the way this evening for Notre Dame USC. But alas, we have certainly seen our moments where it seems these high leverage situations pop up. And for whatever reason, it's almost like they overthink it, right? Yes. USC, for whatever you want to say about USC gives the ball to Caleb Williams and says, fake the handoff and run around the end on 4th down. Right. In a lot of cases, the Philadelphia Eagles just push Jalen Hurts over the line and it works like 90% of the time. Not everybody has that quote unquote Excelsior, but certainly to your point, Oregon, made some questionable decisions there.
So I think the decisions are okay.
The decisions were okay, but the results were less than optimal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just think the decisions are defensible if it's clear that there's a plan, and it's clear, like getting 2 yards with an offensive line that's been this good, with a running attack that's been this good, with the receivers and tight end that have been this good. Like, more than anything, I think this is on the combination of Dan Lanning and Will Stein.
Well, that was going to be my question. My question was, whose fault is that?
They've got a good punter, but I don't think that makes a difference in this game. I don't think you punt and win this game. Like, I think there's too many good receivers on Washington. You're dealing with a backup corner in there because Jaleel Florence, one of the starting corners, goes down. Triquez Bridges in there. You saw Washington picking on him in those big moments. And so I think the results are similar if you punt, but I think Oregon wins this game if they get 1 4th down conversion. Like, that to me is the game. When you're in that kind of driver's seat in that moment with that kind of experience and talent. I'm not going to say Oregon lost this game more than Washington won this game, because again, I think winning is a skill and Washington was better prepared to take advantage, but I'm wearing an Oregon shirt right now. And my vantage point is,
get it out, man. Campfire. Throw it in the fire.
What ails Oregon comes down from the top. And what propels Washington is everybody being on the same page in a better way.
Well, look, Washington stepped up, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Penix. Michael Penix, not really a stranger to people who follow college football at this point, probably your leading Heisman candidate through about halfway into the season here. Michael Penix faced more pressure in this game than I think we've seen him face to date. Michael Penix at moments seemed to struggle with that, but then in the highest leverage moments throughout the course of the game, delivered just some incredible strikes. I mean, the degree of difficulty on some of those balls that he threw, hitting guys in stride as they're running step by step with some guys who are in man coverage on the Oregon side was damn impressive. And I don't know if NFL scouts are watching. I'd love to read the readout after it, because this was a hell of a performance by him, and no throw bigger than that one that eventually won the game for him. Again, your final score here, 36-33. Washington has the entire season in front of it. Believe you me, when I made the prediction, maybe it was the only prediction I'll get right all season long, that Washington was going to win the Pac-12. I had no idea that they would look this good. I had no idea that they would look this good. They're performing admirably. And look, there are other games that they need to get past. This is just one of many, but this is a hell of a start to go 7 weeks into the season and be as formidable as they've looked.
Yeah, and to be clear, and I'm going to hurt myself by hurt my back by patting it so hard. Before the season said I have Oregon winning the Pac-12, losing in Seattle, and winning in Vegas. I hope as an Oregon person that happens, but I hope even more as a college football human that happens, because this was a really fun game. Not for me, but it was clear that a lot of people had a lot of fun watching this game. Yeah. So these appear to be the two most complete teams, because I assume we're going to talk about USC here soon, in the conference. And so if we can get this in Vegas, conference championship week, that seems like a win for the spotlight, the dwindling, fading spotlight on the Pac-12.
Why don't we stay in the Pac-12 and shift over to the Notre Dame USC game?
Let's.
48-20 was your final score. My prediction was 38-20 USC.
And mine?
What was your prediction? You didn't pick USC.
No, I picked Notre Dame to win outright. I had them covering like 24-17, lower scoring, and could not anticipate the absolute collapse of the USC offense. The defense we know about. The offensive first half collapse of USC. Woo! Go on.
I am just relieved sitting here in this safe space among all the verballerhood that my reverse jinx still got it, baby.
Oh, sure.
Still got it. Locked up USC plus the 2.5. In reality, needed about 32.5, Dan. You're right. The USC offense imploded. 5 turnovers, 3 picks from Caleb Williams. They weren't all pretty picks either. They were under duress, and Caleb Williams trying to make a play, and not good. Good game for Xavier Watts on the Notre Dame side, who had 2 of those picks, forced a fumble, also recovered a fumble and ran it in for 6 late in the game. But no, Caleb Williams was far short of expectations in this one. He faced more pressure than he has, I think, through to any point to date here in this season. He was not able to use his legs to extend plays in the same manner that I think he is accustomed to doing.
Notre Dame is a real defense.
I was going to say I attribute that to the fact that Notre Dame is just better defensively, and we saw the results of that. Just 199 yards passing for Caleb Williams. Of course, he made plays. That's what Caleb Williams does. But for an offense that, as you mentioned, I think rightfully a couple days ago, that is built entirely around him when he is not able to go out there and eat in the same manner, that is obviously going to pose some problems. So the combination of turning the ball over, the combination of not having Caleb Williams as his optimal self, obviously created a bit of an opening for Notre Dame. If you did not watch this game, if you just simply were to look at the box score, you'd look at the numbers and say, well, Notre Dame didn't do anything spectacular. Notre Dame won this game essentially using its defense as the springboard to create short fields, to put its offense in a situation where they're not backed up at their own goal line, having to win games heroically like they did a couple weeks ago. This was very much laid out for them on a silver platter. And to their credit, to Marcus Freeman's credit, to Jared Parker's credit, they did what they needed to do to win. This was not rocket science. They were able to run the ball. They were able to make some throws. Sam Hartman did not need to go out there and win the game with his arm, but he made some throws when he had to. The defense stepped up and put the offense in a really good situation. And if you're a Notre Dame fan, this was a breath of fresh air, perhaps a week too late, Dan. But that being said, you'll take the win over the biggest rival any way you can get it. I don't know from afar, speaking as a Notre Dame fan, whether the talking point will be that Notre Dame got its act together, went out there and drilled USC by 28 points, or if the talking point is going to be USC collapsed and the number 10 team in the country against one of its biggest rivals on the road look pedestrian. My hunch is the latter is what people will be talking about more so than a 2-loss team knocking off the USC Trojans. But at least from my vantage point as a Notre Dame fan, this was a welcome breath of fresh air after 3 weeks of being on pins and needles at night.
Yes. And look, this goes back to like, you're never as bad as your worst day. You're never as good as your best day. And so that's, I guess, why I felt pretty good about Notre Dame, that they're still like built to beat a team like USC, especially at home. And I think the story, you ask what the story is, right? Notre Dame righting the ship and looking much more competent on both sides of the ball than they have been, or USC collapsing. I think it's USC. USC was undefeated, even though people knew that this was a flawed USC team coming in, the heights of Caleb Williams and the nature of USC's recent games, going to triple overtime against Arizona, playing closer than they should have against ASU and Colorado, letting Colorado back into that game. I think this was like anticipated from USC. Like, this isn't a USC that could keep up what it was doing on the field these past few weeks. And Notre Dame was right place, right time, right kind of team. And you should have gone with your gut early on the season. Your messages to me were like, Notre Dame could just bully USC. And I don't think it's going to be close.
That was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And you run hot at this campfire, Ty. And
I'm starting to think that my picks, I'm starting to think that there is a real reverse jinx situation going on this year.
I try though, Ty. I actively on the preview. I think I'm having a pretty decent year. I haven't run the numbers, but like I actively say, like, Ty, don't do this as a reverse jinx. Do you actually think USC is gonna on the road the way that they've been playing beat Notre Dame? And you said absolutely, no question in my mind, double digits.
My comment to you and others has been, I have tried the logic method when it comes to making my picks, and that doesn't work. So let's just pick with raw emotion and see what happens. And I still got it wrong, but at least I got to witness a win. Easy win.
Can I ask you a question about Notre Dame moving forward? Obviously, this is not a team that's going to go to a 4-team playoff, having lost twice, the teams that they lose to and the teams ahead of them. But Notre Dame wise, this is a team that they didn't kick USC's ass in that Sam Hartman threw for 400 yards. He essentially had two big plays, one of which was it was like a deep post to Chris Tyree for a touchdown. Audric Estime, it was workmanlike, but he wasn't busting 70-yard runs. Does this give you hope that Notre Dame can be more complete than they've shown this month or this past 3 or 4 weeks moving forward?
Does it give me hope?
Yeah. Against the better teams left on their schedule. I don't have it in front of me. Who do they have left? I know they have Clemson left.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson's the game that I think is obviously one that's going to pose an issue. Clemson's front is not going to be USC's front.
Right.
So that one to me, I think, will ultimately be the bellwether for whether or not this project is back on the tracks or not. But Notre Dame also has a game against Pitt, which Pitt won this evening over Louisville in a rather easy fashion. The rest of the way, it's not exactly a murderer's row. Wake Forest and Stanford to close out the season.
Right. Wake Forest not looking amazing this week.
No, Wake Forest lost to Virginia Tech this week.
Yes. Okay.
So, I mean, yes. Does it give me hope? Of course it gives me hope. This was a big win. It's also not lost to me. This was USC's defense, and USC's defense is nothing special.
I mean, was it 3 first-half picks as well? It wasn't just the defense.
No, I mean, it was a complete effort for Notre Dame. And I think that is what, especially against a good team, that is what fans have been waiting for and been hoping for. Long way to go, but I do feel very much comforted by the fact that the defense, at least the defensive front, was able to contain Caleb Williams in the manner that they did. That was one thing I did not expect. I thought he would do a lot better.
Back half of USC's schedule and the back half of their season,
dude,
they're a mess.
It's
USC's tough. Kind of like you pay Lincoln Riley $9 or $10 million. You're not able to build a defense. You're not really able to build an offense week to week that has an identity beyond Caleb Williams, just like buying time and making A+ plays.
Can I read the schedule off?
It's a low key mess. Continue.
It's not a low key mess. It's out
in the open. Yeah.
Utah at home next week. Then at Cal, which is a crazy sandwich spot, before Washington at home. Then they go on the road to Oregon, and then they come back home against UCLA. All of those games are losable.
I don't think Cal's losable.
On the road
I don't think UCLA. No, Cal's not that good. Cal got run over by a safety today.
All right, fair.
Okay. Other headliners that we need to warm our hands with around this campfire, this crackling college football information. Campfire. Ooh.
Tennessee 20, Texas A&M 13. A decidedly Iowa-Wisconsin-y score in this football game, which was decided a lot by defense and special teams, Dan. Sort of a comedy of errors for a good chunk of it. And what I think you took away from watching this game is that both offensive lines had some trouble. Now,
yeah,
very much so the case on the A&M side. That is nothing new. And it was much more of a pass protection issue on the Tennessee side. Guys getting in Joe Milton's face. Joe Milton did not have a good game for Tennessee by any stretch as a passer. Tennessee much more efficient on the ground. We knew that going in. They were a much better ground team than they were a passing team coming into this week. But this was one of those games that was interesting, if only because it felt like something weird was going to happen the full way through. Like both offenses totally struggled. Max Johnson, a backup, a very clear backup, watching him in this spot, very timing oriented. I jotted down on my notes that it was like watching Max Johnson was like watching old footage of me trying to hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball in the cage.
Jeez, yeah.
It's clear I don't have the bat speed for it. I just have to time it right. Yeah. And Max Johnson, everything is timing based. He does not have the arm. It just has to be on time. And if it's not on time, it's a problem. So that was a little bit difficult to watch. On the flip side of things, Joe Milton it was clear down the stretch the coaching staff did not have faith in him to throw. Even in high leverage spots where they could have used a 3-yard pass, they were just handing it off. Like they did not trust neither team really trusted its offense in a key spot. And that's how you get a thin win here for Tennessee in the manner that they did. I give them credit.
Did they win with one offensive touchdown?
I believe so. Yeah. I believe so.
It was a punt return touchdown, I believe. Yeah.
The other was a punt return. The other was a punt return touchdown, which is hence the special teams bit that I mentioned a little bit ago. But this was not the kind of game that you're going to put in the Hall of Fame for offense. This was defense and special teams and try not to get in your own way.
Winning is a skill, win your clunkers, et cetera, et cetera. Tennessee is a team. If Tennessee is winning without quarterback play, that's good. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna look at the glass half full here because I was impressed enough with Tennessee's front on defense with Jalen Wright. I think it was Dylan Sampson was making plays on the ground for Tennessee.
Right. That's right.
I pointed out last week and I got some pushback like, oh, you're pointing out one play on the Texas A&M offensive line. I don't know if it was a YouTube comment or an email or something. I'm pretty sure Max Johnson took a snap when his own offensive lineman was pushed into him. I'm pretty sure was it a 4th and 1, a 3rd and 1, where he just full on tripped over an offensive lineman's foot on the snap. Like Texas A&M, forget about executing plays. They're not even starting big plays, let alone throwing the back-breaking interception in the end zone. And Tennessee made fewer mistakes and won. And that's a big deal for Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee's great. I don't think they have a high ceiling with what their passing attack is probably going to look like for the duration of the year. And look, if every defensive front that they're going to face is not Texas A&M's, but win this game at home, run the ball, play defense. And if it's a pseudo down year relative to Tennessee fan expectations, still going to win a bunch of games. It's pretty good.
On the road at Bama next week. We'll talk about that one when we do the week 8 preview.
Yeah.
I think some nuance that we need to get into with that game. One other point of note here. I saw Walter Nolan went down. I did not have a chance to see. I don't know if it's been announced exactly what is wrong with his lower leg injury, but about 6 minutes left in the 4th, needed the cart. Looked like he was in a lot of pain. Tough to see that from somebody who's as talented as Walter Nolan, obviously a high recruit for Texas A&M. So we'll wait for the readout on him. I guess the broader question is about Jimbo Fisher, and perhaps we can get into that a little bit later when we do our roasts. But Jimbo Fisher has not won a true road contest against a ranked opponent since 2016.
Oh my God, that's a different time. And these are winnable games. This is a Tennessee offense that certainly didn't do enough to win this game. And not that Texas A&M's did, but this is a winnable moment for Texas A&M. I know they were up a chunk into this game and had opportunities to capitalize deep in Tennessee territory. It's not a team that has honed their winning skill. It just isn't. And so I don't see how this changes. And we can point to Max Johnson being a backup quarterback and Connor Wegman being, hurt and out for the year with his injury, and Max Johnson clearly not being the guy last year. But like, were they with Kellen Mond? Doesn't seem that. Like, how long are we going to make this excuse for Texas A&M that just like, well, Jimbo's got this stacked up against him, and where we can just say Jimbo Fisher isn't a great college football coach in 2023.
Well, he's not. He's not. And that's unfortunately where we're at.
Yeah.
And I'll talk more about that later. We got a whole other segment that we're going to get into with it. But I'm of the mind that the excuses are futile at this point. I mean, it's always the same result. And that is part of the joke with A&M right now. But it's always the same stuff. And that's bothersome if you are an A&M fan. That it has not progressed.
Yeah.
It has not progressed. The fact that Tennessee wins this game with 100 yards passing is just mind-blowing. They ran for 232, and they turned it over to their running backs in the biggest moments of the game. But Joe Milton, 11 for 22 with 100 yards, and they won this game. That was a winnable game for A&M.
Yep,
winnable game.
Absolutely was.
The final fire starter, hand warmer, foot warmer that I want to discuss is this Miami-North Carolina game.
Yeah.
So this game was something else, man. Final score, after a bit of a push from Miami, ended up being 41-31 in favor of the North Carolina Tar Heels, winning at home in resounding fashion. This was a game that Miami led at halftime. Miami's first 4 drives after leading at half. Fumble, interception, punt, turnover on downs. Turnover on downs, technically the first play of the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, in that same span in the third quarter, North Carolina scored touchdowns on 3 of their 4 drives. They went up 18 points. And that truly was the manner in which they took control of this football game. Tez Walker got in on the action, scored 3 touchdowns, had a really big game for North Carolina. Drake May, being Drake May, had a good game as well. The story here was essentially North Carolina forcing mistakes from Miami. It was Miami finding ways to beat itself. And we saw that a week ago with Georgia Tech in much more embarrassing fashion. This was a little bit more of the traditional variety, but this is, if you're Mario Cristobal, if you're a Miami fan, this is exactly what you're looking to stop doing. Stop doing these things and you'll win more games. But in the meantime, you go up against a good team like North Carolina. I think we can agree at this point that North Carolina is pretty good. Not sure exactly where we stand on the defense.
They're 7 weeks in and haven't lost. That's great.
7 weeks in, haven't lost. They seem to be on a glide path to some tougher games in November when they're going to remain unbeaten and have some high leverage spots. You go up against a team like North Carolina, you commit dumb mistakes, you're going to lose. And that's where Miami's at right now.
Yeah. And by the way, Omarion Hampton is emerging as a full-on star for North Carolina in the backfield. I know they were sharing carries early on in the season, but the balanced attack that Chip Lindsey's Tar Heels have right now, and it's just going to open things up more and more in that big November stretch, during that big November stretch for North Carolina, if they're able to run like this and get the stops they had. And I think TVD played literal catch with Cyrus Gray on one of the interceptions.
That's right.
Cyrus Gray didn't do a lot on that interception. He's like, well, this is my zone. I'm just going to kind of backpedal into it. And TVD just threw it to him. So if they're able to do basic things on defense and have a sort of balanced, potent offense as the game wears on, because Miami did a nice job against North Carolina early, and Tar Heels got stronger as the game went on, this is a great spot right now for the Heels.
4 turnovers for the Canes. Now, North Carolina, for its part, was not void of mistakes. 14 penalties for 147 yards, which is
also true.
That's
also
a lot.
True. Yeah.
That's a lot. It's not like they're bulletproof, but 4
winning is
touchdowns,
a skill.
Winning is a skill. Winning is a skill. So whether it was Drake May, Marion Hampton, Tez Walker, North Carolina got its on the offensive side of the ball. And despite the fact that they gave up 31 points, a lot of that in a feverish comeback effort from Miami, despite the fact that they gave up a lot of yardage. TVD had to throw it 48 times to try and get back in this thing. Creating those turnovers was essential. Creating those turnovers was key. They didn't convert all of them to points, but just to stop the drive against what I still think it can be a good offense in Miami is pretty important.
Agree.
So there you go. Those, I believe, are our headliners for the week that was in week 7. As we sit here around the campfire, though, you know how we do.
Of course.
Let's just say something nice about a bunch of other teams and other games, shall we?
Oh, I love it.
Give me some good vibrations, Dan. Yeah. Good vibrations from elsewhere around college football.
Okay. We've talked about the SEC. We've talked about the Pac-12 a little bit, but it was kind of a crazy day in the Pac-12. Utah keeps winning without a quarterback. That's hard to do. They decided to just run the hell out of the ball with, well, I mean, their starting running back and their safety. I think it's Sione Vaki. Yeah. He runs for 150 yards. They stomp Cal and keep mostly winning. And so, we talked a little bit about, the severity of Cam Rising's knee injury coming out more and more. It's good, man. It's good if you can comfortably win without a quarterback. Good for you. Oregon State, I'm not going to focus on the negative of UCLA right now, but DJU had himself a great game. The Oregon State defense had a great game. And I don't know where they're going to stand when it's all said and done in the Pac-12, but you talk about a spoiler right now with having both Oregon and Washington and maybe the biggest threat for each on the remainder of their schedules, depending on how you feel about USC. The Oregon State's going to be squarely in the college football picture moving forward, even if it's just as somebody who could spoil things. But even they're just a good team against flawed ones more and more. So good for them. How about Arizona in the Pac-12, by the way?
Dude, what was that? 44-6 over Wazoo?
In a huge letdown spot, going to Pullman after losing in triple overtime to USC. Noah Fafita, our pal Jake, who we work with, was like, "Can you please mention Arizona as the best 3-loss team in the country?" Can't argue with it.
They're good. Noah Fafita might be better than Jaden DeLaura. He's been great the last 2 weeks.
He has been very, very good. And they were balanced. They ran the ball. They spread the ball around. Wazoo scored early, and then Arizona I think they went on a 44-0 run.
They trucked them. I looked at the score. Everybody has this moment. Yep. Usually it's when it's a low score. You look at a box score and the stats are off. But sometimes it's when the score looks really out of whack, where you just kind of refresh it and you think, oh, the Wi-Fi's stuck, or I need to update the app. You know what I mean? Everybody's had that. I was doing that when I saw that score because I didn't believe it at first. And then I checked ESPN and CBS and all these sources, and they all had the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, what a showing for Jed Fish.
Yeah. In watching this game back and forth with other stuff, it was just very clear that Arizona has its act together. And so they are more cohesive than I thought they would be. But look, we're 7 weeks into the season, so they've taken a nice step forward. Elsewhere, in the SEC, by the way, can I say something nice? Jaden Daniels might be he should be in New York this coming December. LSU played defense. LSU spread the ball around. I get where Auburn is at right now as a program. LSU hasn't been playing defense against anybody. They got stops, they made plays, and they took care of business like they should be doing against overmatched teams. So great job from Jaden Daniels. Again, ho-hum.
Yeah, it helps that Auburn can't really throw.
Well, sure.
It helps. We have to be complete in our coverage here. But that being said, Auburn likes to run, and they couldn't really do that either.
Yep.
And this is an LSU team that has been more than generous. However you want to take the yards, they'll give them to you. So 48-18 was your final. LSU knocks off Auburn, and your point on Jaden Daniels is right on the money. He is, like you often say about Caleb Williams, how they've constructed the entire plane out of him, that offense. They've basically done that on the LSU side. Logan Diggs has been fine on the ground, but this is a Jaden Daniels operation, and he has performed admirably.
He's the clear best quarterback in the SEC, depending on how you feel about Graham Mertz and what he was able to do. Shredding South Carolina, friends.
He's back.
By the way, the thing that I thought about with the LSU win, and no, Auburn can't throw, what it means for the Alabama game. And they're like, okay, so has LSU defense solved something? Because Alabama's offense has not solved something under the wunderkind, Tommy Rees, second half against Arkansas, which, by the way, good for Arkansas. If we're talking about good vibrations, KJ Jefferson making plays, the defense overwhelming the Alabama offensive line in that second half at times. They got a lot of fight in them. They're not a great team, but just in terms of good vibrations, I'm feeling like the Alabama LSU game is going to be bonkers.
Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers coming up here soon. How much of Florida, South Carolina did you see, if any?
I saw a fair chunk of the second half.
Okay. Loved that game. That game gave me good vibrations. Florida's down 10. I don't know don't interpret me saying it gave me good vibrations in a strange way, unless that's the thing. Spencer Rattler made some incredible throws. Graham Mertz made some incredible throws. For Florida to do that on the road, after looking like what they've looked like on the road this year, for Graham Mertz to throw for, I don't know what his final line was, 400 and some odd yards?
423 and 3 touchdowns. Graham Mertz is back, Dan. He is back.
Yeah, baby.
He is so back.
It's a great vibration, not even just a good vibration. For Florida to get a win like that on the road, seal it like they did, that was great. That was a great moment for college football today.
Florida scored 41 points and won 41-39 over South Carolina, despite going 4 of 15 on third downs, which is sort of a backwards stat.
I give you that.
But hey, it was a shootout. The offense did not back down.
No. Good use of Tom Petty right there, even if it was unintentional. Elsewhere in the SEC, good vibration-wise, I kind of like the fight from Vandy. Game was pretty close late. It was weirdly pretty close late. They scored early on in that game. Eventually, Georgia separates themselves. I saw Brock Bowers got hurt, and I think he's hopefully going to be okay. It's not like an ankle break. It might just be an ankle sprain.
Yeah.
I appreciate that sort of competitiveness from Brock Bowers fighting. I don't know what else in the SEC gave me those vibrations.
We got to give a shout out to the broadcast team in the Mizzou-Kentucky game. So Mizzou beats Kentucky, but they showed one of our tweets.
Oh, what was it?
I think it was mine. I don't remember if it was mine or yours.
Okay.
They showed the tweet about we need to make the shirt about let Brady cook.
Oh, that's definitely you. That's great.
Was that me?
Let Brady cook. He kind of ordered takeout at times.
Yeah, didn't really cook in this game, but they won. They
won. The defense actually came alive a little bit. Kentucky is still struggling on offense, but again, if you're looking at either one of these teams and what they had penciled in for the rest of the year, they were both on it in terms of wins. So good for Mizzou at this point that they set themselves up as one of the more fascinating teams back half of the schedule.
So my good vibrations, I want to start in the Big 12. Rocco frickin' Beck, baby.
Yeah, man.
Rocco Beck is a dude, plays for Iowa State. He had a great game in the win over Cincinnati, 30-10. They mentioned Rocktober on the broadcast, which we're partial to Rocktober here. Don't look now, but Iowa State's back to 500. It was a rough go. Matt Campbell kind of mixing it up with fans. And
listen, that was a great moment, though. I had good vibrations from that. That he had to be held back.
We make content. Okay, that was a great moment for us. Yeah. Back to 500. They're getting better. It's clear they're getting better. After the bye week, they're on bye now. They've got Baylor, Kansas, BYU, Texas, and Kansas State. I'm not going to say that is an easy stretch, but Iowa State at least looking a lot more formidable here. Feels like they've got their guy at quarterback. Feels like they're starting to build some support around him. We know they've already got the defense. I'm not going to say that they're going to finish 9-3. That's not where I'm going with this. But could Iowa State win 7 games? I think it's very much on the table. Very much on the table. So good vibes all around on the Iowa State side. Also in the Big 12, shout out Avery Johnson.
Oh, Avery Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the guy, man.
Look, we love Will Howard. Will Howard won this team, the Big 12 last year, in relief of Adrian Martinez. I tried to tell you early on in the year.
You did. No, you did.
There's a twinkle. There's a college football twinkle in Manhattan.
The clouds part a little bit when he gets the ball in his hands. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in this game, in K-State's win over Texas Tech. K-State hammered Texas Tech on the road, and Avery Johnson was a big part of that. 5 rushing touchdowns for the freshman. So that
and a bounce back effort, by the way,
big
after
time.
losing like they did to Oklahoma State.
ACC wise, Keon Coleman. I mean, it wasn't exactly like Florida State went up against a juggernaut in the form of Cuse. Syracuse got drilled a week ago by North Carolina. We saw the writing on the wall here with Florida State. The question for Florida State has been how they're going to handle these tweener games that don't matter as much as some of the big headliners. They've done well in the headliners, but what about Cuse? What about these 41-3? This was never a contest, but Keon Coleman, 6 for 114 and a touchdown in the first half, finished with 9 for 140 and a touchdown in the game. Keon Coleman proving to be, I don't know if the most impactful transfer is the right way to characterize it, but certainly one of the most impactful transfers throughout college football so far this season. So shout out to him in the ACC. Also, shout out to the Pitt freaking Panthers, Dan.
Yeah, man, they needed this. They needed that pick six. They needed the night against Louisville. Yeah.
What a neck crack for these guys. A dreadful 1-4 start for the Pitt Panthers, after which they demoted their quarterback to tight end, and I think demoted him from tight end to something else that we don't know what that is. They just said he's actually not playing tight end now. Naturally, they just knocked the snot out of the number 14 team in the country, the Louisville Cardinals, a week after Louisville knocks off Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Pitt scored 38 points in a game like this. Not all on offense. It's still Pitt we're talking about here.
Right.
It wasn't exactly the type of statistical performance where you look at and say, wow, Pitt with pinball numbers. Nothing like that. I promise you.
I thought I was just having a stroke. I thought you called Louisville the number 4 team in the country. The number 14.
14. That's right.
Yeah. Sorry, not 14. Yeah. That was probably on me. And I was like, wait, what did I miss? As I flew out west. Okay. Yeah, and Christian Veilleux, is that how you pronounce it?
Veilleux, yeah, Veilleux.
Yeah, who I think we last saw struggling against Iowa when he had to replace, who was that?
Sean Clifford.
Sean Clifford against the Hawkeyes. So a nice bounce back story for him in relief, and Pitt getting it done somehow, some way.
Pitt gets it done. Big Ten, throw your jokes into the fire, Dan. Toss them in.
Here you go.
Let them smolder. That's right. Thank you. Great sound effect.
You're welcome.
Iowa is doing something remarkable.
What have we called it, Ty?
What have we called it?
The reverse frosting.
A little bit of reverse frosting.
They're going to be the worst 10-2 team of all time. Yeah.
Iowa is doing something remarkable. They're answering a question that I have had, that I'm sure the listeners have had. They never knew it. What would Navy be like if it played defense?
I guess
Iowa is Navy with a defense. That's essentially what they are. They don't care about throwing it. They don't care.
No, you're right.
They don't care. They had 237 yards of offense in this game. Actually, they're not even Navy on offense, but they're just not going to throw the ball. They don't care. They had 237 total yards, 82 of which came on an early touchdown run. The rest of the way, you could do the math, right? Do the math on that. They had like 150 yards the rest of the way. They beat Wisconsin 15-6. They've got one loss. They're very much in the driver's seat in the Big Ten West. They're going to go to the Big Ten title game. Nobody in the Big Ten West is going to beat Iowa. Nobody is going to beat them, Dan.
I wonder if we can figure out what Iowa's record is. Like once they get that 77-yard touchdown run, like it always seems to happen. They're just like, I don't know if it was Caleb Johnson in the last year or two. And then it was LaShawn Williams. Is that who had the one today? That once they get that long touchdown run, that like is everybody on the headset just like, all right, back it in, guys. That's a day. That's all we needed. And it's kind of true. They just play baseball blowouts, Iowa. So like Iowa beat, it says here Wisconsin. I saw Tanner Mordecai got hurt, right?
Yeah.
It says here Wisconsin. This might as well be like Iowa football beat the Seattle Mariners 15-6. That's how they play now. And that's why we're getting a reverse Scott Frost who coached the best 3-9 team ever. We're going to see the best 11-1 or whatever team ever.
And final point on the Big Ten. Yeah. Rutgers, baby. Rutgers scored 21 unanswered points to beat Michigan State in the fourth quarter. Rutgers now starts 5-0 at home for the first time since 2006. Been a minute, but Rutgers is 1 win from going bowling.
Yeah, yes, they very much are.
It's going to be week 8, 1 win away.
Who do they have week 8?
Good on them. I don't got it in front of me.
Oh, okay. Anything else in the Big Ten? I saw Maryland went down to Illinois in a bit of a Mike Locksley battle. I think he was offense coordinator way back when. Anything else that gave you some good vibrations? That was a field goal at the gun, if I remember correctly.
Field goal at the gun. Yeah, I mean, Michigan, Ohio State won in resounding fashion. Penn State won 63-0. The only other real point of note was the Illinois-Maryland game.
When we get to Illini, bad year. Good day.
When we get to scary stories, perhaps we could talk about the Colorado defense, which I know you did not mention.
I know I didn't mention that. Well, I don't know how we even. I was saving it for scary stories and saving it. I think it's Alec A.O. Manor, who had 296 yards receiving. Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. Okay. Those are good vibrations. We're sitting here around the campfire. I'm going to get my flashlight out. I'm going to shine it on my face. Let's do some scary stories from this week. We've named this the Rocky Lombardi Picture Show.
I like that.
Rocky Lombardi still playing, by the way, which is wild.
Yeah, he was class of 2008. He's a CPA now. He's been in school long enough. Now, Rocky Lombardi's still at NIU after transferring in from Michigan State. All right, what is our scary stories segment?
We're just going to talk about bizarre things that happen in the world of college football. We're going to talk about things that scared us, things that were perhaps influenced by the occult forces of my reverse jinx and whatnot. Let's talk a little bit about BYU.
Guess who just got murdered?
BYU on offense, dreadful. BYU as a team outgained by 341 yards. They went 2 of 14 on third downs. They got absolutely destroyed by TCU on the road. They lost 44-11. Nice win for TCU, by the way. But BYU was a 5.5-point road dog. A lot of people, you and I agreed on that game. We like BYU. And we said, we don't think TCU is all that good. They drilled BYU in this game. So
Josh Hoover gets the start, and it was just ugly from BYU.
That's right. That's right. All right. Elsewhere, I do want to get to this Stanford Colorado game. Perhaps you could talk about Colorado's defense and what went down in this game, despite having a 29-0 lead. I want to talk about the refs. Speaking of bizarre moments, I've never seen this before in college football. It got a chuckle from everybody online. The refs were not having it with the guy, whoever the intern was, up in the booth in Boulder. Whoever was in charge of the sound effects button was playing the sound effects as Stanford was in formation and about ready to run a play.
Yeah.
And it led to a very bizarre moment with the ref coming on the PA system and saying, please stop doing that. Otherwise, we're going to assess a penalty to Colorado. I've never seen that before in my life.
Poor form from the stadium operations crew at Colorado. Poorer form from Colorado. Ty.
Yeah.
Holy hell. So it was, I think Ashton Daniels didn't start this game for Stanford. Travis Hunter comes back. Travis Hunter gets scorched. Travis Hunter seems to play 1,000 plays in this game. It was Alec A.O. Manor, if I pronounced that correctly.
You got it.
Stanford comes back. Dion elected. So Stanford comes back down 29 at the half. They come back to tie it with a field goal in the waning seconds. It goes to overtime. Dion chooses to go on offense, I believe, which is pretty rare if you win the coin toss. And Stanford ends up winning this one. It goes, 2 overtimes?
Yeah.
And Stanford wins it on the strength of, by the way, an incredible catch on the helmet of Travis Hunter from
Crazy.
Manor.
So it was one of those deals where he's backpedaling. Travis Hunter, who played in this game, was back and had a hell of a game on offense, to his credit. Like a sick spin move touchdown and run.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really, he had a good game. But this was one of those deals where the receiver was backpedaling. Ball came in. Travis Hunter did not see it. Receiver reaches around Travis Hunter, pins the ball to the back of his helmet, backpedals a little bit until he can get a grip on the ball, then kind of maneuvers it away from the helmet, goes on to score a touchdown. Crazy, crazy play.
I'm pretty, in terms of scariness, I don't know, it depends how it sort of resonates with your brain, and your mileage may vary, but Houston Cougars, pretty scary way to lose if you're a West Virginia fan. I think that was
boy
a couple nights ago. Seemed like things were going to be pretty nice for West Virginia. That's the first, is it the first win from a new Big 12 team against a longtime Big 12 team, I believe, this Houston win.
I mean, what a way to win, too.
A Hail Mary.
Wow.
Comeback.
And it was a crazy 1-2 sequence. It was a crazy pass that got West Virginia up 39-35 to begin.
Mm-hmm.
And then Houston getting a chance at a Hail Mary and completing it. I mean, talk about occult forces. Jeez.
That was wild. I'm trying to think what else was scary to you. I mean, I can go back to Oregon on 4th down. That was pretty terrifying to me on my couch.
Well, I talk a lot about zombie Alabama. Generally, I would say that zombie Alabama is pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I declared zombie Alabama back about midway through the first half. And it's apparent that Arkansas fought, and Arkansas was able to kind of hold Alabama down. Alabama's offense is in a really weird spot right now. I think we know at this point Jalen Milroe is the guy that they're going to roll with, but wasn't exactly a great game from him on the passing side. I still would love to see them turn him loose and let him run a little bit more than he has right now. It's just a lot of scrambling. It's not that much designed. I don't know if they're afraid of getting him hurt because they don't want to have to go to Tyler Buckner or Ty Simpson. I don't know what the thought is there, because all we heard about with respect to Jalen Milroe was his elite NFL caliber speed. And we just have not seen enough of it for my taste. That being said, a win's a win, but Arkansas kept this one relatively close. I am extremely interested the rest of the way as Alabama plays some of these teams on its schedule to see what that looks like. See what it looks like this coming week against Tennessee. I like their chances against Tennessee. I did pick Tennessee in the preseason. I probably won't pick them now that I know what I know. But interesting game, the LSU game that you mentioned earlier. I don't know if we're fully at zombie Alabama again. I don't know if we're at the point where Alabama is undead and is going to rip through the rest of its schedule.
Well, like most zombies, Alabama needs brains because they couldn't score in the second half. It was Jalen Milroe popping a couple of big plays. I think Kobe Prentice caught one of the longer passes, and that was kind of it. They didn't score a touchdown in the second half, right? They just hung on against Arkansas. If I'm remembering correctly,
sure,
it was a hang-on job that guys
exactly.
like Dallas Turner on defense dragged them across the finish line.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought we had zombie Alabama back, so it's frightening.
I don't think Alabama's that good.
It's frightening me on two sides of the coin. If zombie Alabama's back in some sense, then that's obviously frightening for all opponents. If they're not back, then that's frightening, I think, for Alabama fans, because you do have this lumpy quality to the way they play. Other scary moments this week: Brock Bowers went down. If you saw this, Brock Bowers,
right? We talked, yeah.
Bit of a scare in the second quarter. He limped off. It ends up being a sprained ankle. He's going to be okay, but he had precautionary x-rays. Kirby Smart said he's fine. There's also a moment in the Memphis game where dude sucker punched another dude in the spot where you're not supposed to sucker punch guys.
Mm-hmm.
That was not very fun.
Didn't like that.
Definitely scary. That was the kind of thing that you see the video and it's like, oh, I felt that a little bit and it hurt. So any other scary moments for you, Dan, looking across college football?
It's been a scary couple of weeks if you enjoy Syracuse football, with what they suffered at the hands of Florida State with. That's barely English. And then Clemson, and they just have been shelled recently. Syracuse. Well, that was 2 weeks ago, Clemson, right? They have Florida State this week. It was Toafili and Trey Benson running all over them. Jordan Travis made some big plays. It's pretty scary right now, considering that this team started out winning a bunch of games and now fading pretty quickly.
Let's get to the roast.
We used to roast Stay Puft marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda.
Let's close things out, Dan, with some hot fire. Some takes from you and I. We've got takes from the Reverb line as well. Not a full complement from the Reverb line. Just a sampling. We'll play an extended cut out on our Patreon at verballers.com. We will get back to playing more of the full complement next week. Just again, a sampling here as we test out our roast segment. But my, I guess, biggest, hottest take is not anything that is going to be groundbreaking or break the internet or something that everybody listening to this stream or to this on-demand audio has not already thought. It's time to cut bait with Jimbo Fisher.
It is time.
It is time to get the oil money together. It is time to find some underhanded way to pay the man off so that he goes away and rides off peacefully into the sunset. He's had a long, storied career. Guy won a national championship. I'm sure could coach somewhere else. I'm sure could get some broadcasting work. I don't know.
You got somebody in mind to replace him?
No, guy's got options. Mike Elko would be great. But my only point is this. A&M is now staring down the barrel of 8-4 again, maybe 7-5, maybe worse. And we all know where this thing is going to go. We all know that the natural conclusion is Jimbo Fisher is not going to be there next year. Seems like the logical thing for me. So if it's going to be done eventually, just do it immediately. Just get your name in the hat. Let everybody signal to anybody out there who is interested in a new gig that the job in College Station is going to be open, and let's just move on. Let's not kid ourselves at this point. A&M's got 3 losses. They were clearly aspiring for a lot more. And to your point from earlier, of course, there are built-in excuses. You got the backup quarterback, injuries, whatever else. But it is clear at this point that whatever the project looked like from the perspective of Jimbo Fisher to rectify the A&M situation, it's not going to happen. He's had enough time. It's time to cut bait. Do
you think Kalen DeBoer's wife is going to begin looking for real estate in College Station?
No, I don't.
I've heard the rumor.
No.
Hearing lots of rumors. Okay.
Would A&M hire Urban?
No, nobody's hiring Urban Meyer.
I don't think anyone's hiring Urban.
No, nobody's hiring Urban Meyer. Yeah, that's not a bad take. You ready for my roast?
Who are you roasting? What are you roasting?
I think we fully need to, I mean, we kind of did already today, but I think as a college football community, fully ignore Michigan. Like, let's not watch Michigan highlights. Let's not talk about what Michigan should be ranked. Let's not, think about a 4-team. Like, if I were to ask you right now, which 4 teams do you have in your playoff, and you just fully omit Michigan, I think that's worthwhile.
Why?
Like, they have not done a single thing this year that is worth attention. They've taken care of business in impressive ways, but they beat Indiana 52-7. They have nobody until they have a 2-game season right now. And the way that they scheduled, the way that the Big Ten is, and it's not fully their fault that the Big Ten is what it is, that the Michigan State game will go the way that it will go with how Michigan State is playing this year. But right now, Michigan, to me, like there's nothing worthwhile to say about Michigan, is there? Like, how do you form any sort of opinion about Michigan with the teams they've played this year? They've taken care of business. That's what
my stance on this, though. My stance on this. My stance has always been that a team is not defined by its schedule.
I know they've done what an excellent team should do against their schedule, but like, if I hear Dan Orlovsky say Michigan might be the most complete team in the country, what? There's no data right now on Michigan, and we're in October, like mid-October on Michigan. Like, what opinion about Michigan can you have that's worthwhile right now? Like,
that they've taken care of business.
They've taken care of business, and like, we think they're really good. They've made the playoff a couple years in a row, but like, we know nothing about this year's team, really.
I'm standing by my pick of Michigan as a national champion.
That's fine. And that will come to pass. I just like, in the college football conversation right now, like, We can talk about North Carolina improving. We can talk about, how's Texas going to bounce back from Oklahoma, or is Oklahoma against the back half of their schedule going to continue its winning ways? We can talk about Oregon and Washington. We can talk about, Florida State. We can talk about Alabama's flaws or LSU's flaws or Georgia's flaws or Tennessee's flaws. What is there to talk about with Michigan? I'm not saying excellence is boring. I'm saying because of their schedule, there's nothing that we can accurately say about Michigan.
Their current strength of schedule ranking, I should say current as of a week ago, was 114th. And
Michigan shouldn't be part of the college football conversation right now.
It's not necessarily through the fault of the players.
It's not the fault of the players. It's not even the fault of the program. It's just they're a program not worth talking about right now until we get to the final two, not final two, but the two of the final 3 weeks of the season for the Wolverines.
At Penn State, week 11, obviously the big rivalry against Ohio State at home in week 13. The sandwich games on the road at Maryland. We probably see Maryland in a bit of a different light. After all, it is now October and not September.
It's Michigan State and Purdue leading up to Penn State. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other takes from you, Dan, before we kick it to the Verballerhood?
Yeah. There's one other one, and I was workshopping this for a while. I have no idea if the ACC is incredible or the worst thing ever right now. Clemson isn't especially watchable. Florida State seems like they're getting their act together. North Carolina seems improved, but Pitt has been terrible TV. NC State has wasted everybody's time this year, right?
I've been saying it. I made that comment a couple weeks ago, and I had a couple people tweet me. Nice people, not trying to be snarky. Are you sure about that? Do you really feel that way about NC State?
An offensive coordinator change, and they get Brennan Armstrong. They bench Brennan Armstrong. MJ Morris wasn't especially good against Pitt. They're wasting all of our time, all of our hopes and dreams. Wake Forest has taken a step back, obviously losing to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has been terrible. Virginia's been at times feisty and entertaining, but also at times terrible. Miami is its own whole deal after what they did last week. They've been disappointing. There's just something about the ACC right now where you're just should you invest any emotion if you're a fan of an ACC team that isn't Florida State or North Carolina in this moment? Should you invest any sort of emotion in this conference? Flip side, are they the most incredible conference in college football because of that week-to-week nonsense?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know where I stand, but there's something that's just chaotic and explosive about the ACC that drives me a little bit nuts.
I love the North Carolina story.
Okay.
I love the North Carolina story. North Carolina is going to be a whisper quiet undefeated team. Going into the latter half of its schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not play Florida State. They do not play Louisville. There will be opportunities to lose. I'm still not 100% sold on that defense. But to your point, yeah, it's nothing if not interesting.
If your starting point is Drake May, it's good.
You do a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
All right, we got a sampling of roasts that came in on the Reverb line. Again, for ballers.com, you can get the full extended version. We're going to post that over the next couple days or so. Next week around the campfire, we'll have a little bit more in the roasting basket. But roasting basket, here's what we got here on the Reverb line. Have a listen.
Daniel calling in from Columbia, South Carolina. And Dan, I don't want to hear any of your false positivity of, man, Oregon really tried it. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You've been beaten down on Tide in these Notre Dame losses, and I need some raw, terribly sad emotions to match where I'm at right now because my fiance's out here trying to be supportive, but nobody understands how I'm feeling.
This is Eric in Tempe, Arizona, local Husky fan out here. And listen, Oregon is an excellent team. They run the ball well, but when it matters most, they choke. Can't convert on fourth down, can't kick the field goal. The Huskies are the best team in the best conference.
I'm 37 years old, so I feel like I have enough wisdom to say this. I'm actually driving to Kroger to get arthritis cream for my knuckles. Has nothing to do with the fact that I was punching walls after watching Dan Lanning not punt the ball. Make it all better, guys. Make it all better.
Tyler in Wisconsin here. Based on what I read, we're supposed to be roasting something. I can just roast myself for ever believing that this Badger team was anything more than an 8-win team. Awful performance tonight.
Just a sampling, Dan. Can I also roast my picks? Oh my God.
It was pretty bad.
It's been so bad.
Well, it's the team you know the most.
It's been so bad. It's been so bad. I don't know how to get back on track with these picks. I don't.
What did you do this week? What was your record? What?
Well, I would have hit the Wonder Dog parlay if not for A&M. I hit the money line on Mizzou. I hit the money line on Florida.
Okay.
But the A&M one is what threw that parlay off. I had BYU, which got absolutely annihilated by TCU. I did have Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State won. We didn't even mention that, but another win. We'll talk more about that on the
That's good vibrations, right? Alan
next
Bowman
show
had
that we
himself
do.
a game. Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk more about Oklahoma State. I promise you in the coming weeks. And I also had the SC game. Those are my three like big picks that I threw out there. So 1 out of 3. Ooh. And I guess 2 out of 3 on the parlay, but still not where I need to be. I feel like I'm starting to kind of come out of the fog, but it's taking too long and I'm losing my patience.
I'm sorry to hear it, Ty. I'm sorry to hear it. By the way, just a couple of G5 results. Fresno State somehow managed to hang on, didn't play it especially well. Logan Fife got the start against Utah State. That was a couple nights ago. Air Force, by the way, is the clear class of the Mountain West, undefeated right now. They take down Wyoming. Boise State is winning with like 10 or 11 minutes left in that matchup. And in the MAC tie, there's 2 clear powers in Toledo and Miami of Ohio. And guess what? They play next week.
Boom.
That's giving me good vibrations.
Love it. All right. Thank you to one and all for downloading.
I have
Thank
dudes,
you to one and all for listening.
You want any dudes? You want any dudes? Dudes? Yes? No?
We can do dude alerts very quickly.
All right, very quick. I've got quick dudes. By the way, Josh Hoover for TCU threw for 439 yards. I knew that they were throwing like crazy. It almost starts and ends with Elik Ayomanor for Stanford going for nearly 300 yards through the air. Omarion Hampton for North Carolina goes for almost 200 yards. Ollie Gordon in an all-purpose effort for Oklahoma State on the ground and through the air was very good in their win against Kansas, which was a really fun back and forth. That was a Jason Bean Kansas game. I have the connection between Graham Mertz and Ricky Pearsall was especially exciting and fun. Daniel Richardson, you'll remember, transfer now. He's at FAU. They win against USF. He throws for a ton of yards. And the safety, Sione Vaki for Utah, just lining up at quarterback and running straight at Cal and having it work. Those are some dudes.
And Xavier Watts.
Xavier Watts,
who I mentioned earlier for Notre Dame, had a big game on the defensive side of the ball. Those are dudes for week 7. Thank you for joining us around the campfire. If you enjoyed it, hit subscribe, hit follow wherever it is that you find this podcast. Go on out to verballers.com. That is our Patreon. That's where you could further invest yourself as a member of the Verballerhood. Dan Rubenstein, I hope this was cathartic for you. It was for me.
It was. I mean, it doesn't make the Oregon game go any better in my head. I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep any better, that I was able to get out some emotions, but I'm glad I got to sit with you by the digital fire. That was great.
And you as well. For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildebrandt. Thanks again for downloading, for listening, for supporting the show. We'll talk to you all soon.
Peace.